The Kang Tao Smart Blaster is probably one of the coolest guns in the game, and ever since I saw it, I knew it had to exist in the Nerf space. Fortunately, there's a creator on Thingiverse that has files for this blaster. Now, before you run over to Thingiverse, download the files and start printing this thing, make sure to watch this full video because I have a lot of things to say about this build. Also, if you're a big fan of Cyberpunk like I am, make sure to leave a comment down in the comment section and like this video. With that, let's jump into today's video. Well, I guess best way to explain this thing is, so this is more of a cosplay piece done by a designer on Thingiverse known as Printed Props. And big shout out to Printed Props. They do some really cool, game accurate type of stuff and basically cosplay things. Now you could just print this out as is, as a cosplay piece, and it'd be perfect, to be honest. But me personally, I had to take it a step further. I really wanted this thing to work well. So the biggest pitfall I had was, number one, getting into this blaster. It is a smart blaster. It takes, Arduino or some type of control board. It takes brushless motors. Then you're getting into the motor controllers, the ESCs. You have to basically have a good power source. And also there's a big solenoid in there, which also drives up the cost. There's just a lot of bells and whistles for this thing. It really drives the cost up of this build up to, several $100s, depending on what kind of electronics and hardware you're using. So you're probably asking, what issues did I have? Well, mainly it was the geometry of this cage was fitted and designed around a brushless motor that I just couldn't get. I tried to find some substitutes and replacements. I was never really quite confident enough to make the purchase because, brushless motors are expensive and I didn't want to buy the wrong one. So I thought to myself, well, let's just do a brushed build. It's a lot harder than you think because at the time there was no fly core system. Nowadays I would just take a fly core, drop it in there, be done. Now, something that's really difficult with these type of blasters is fitting that flywheel cage inside of them so it doesn't make the overall profile and look of the blaster look out of place. And what I mean by that is usually you'll have like a big flywheel bulge on the side of it, especially if the wheels are running vertical versus horizontal, you can get uneven blasters. And that just doesn't work when you're really pushing for a cosplay piece. The last part, which was just probably me being stubborn, is I printed this thing with the included in the supports throughout the blaster. And I printed it in PETG. So this thing was like, it's really rigid, and I had to remove a lot of the internal supports and they were not coming out easily. So it was a lot of cutting and hacking and going in there with, a Dremel and yanking on the thing. And it was just an overall mess and just a pain. I really should have stopped, tried to find, because I think there is a file set that didn't have the supports on the inside, or at the time there wasn't, I don't know. Should have taken some time to just go in and remove them. I made the decision to power through it, and it just made for a long, hard, difficult build, and I don't recommend doing that. I also took it a step further and I wanted to put brass inserts through this whole thing because I do want to work on this in the future. So taking it apart, putting it back together multiple times, I wanted to make sure that this thing wouldn't get weak and screws start to fall out and the threads get all torn up. So I wanted brass inserts throughout this whole build, which I was able to pull off. In addition, you'll notice that there's kind of these rivets in some places, and that's because some of these points where the screws were supposed to be in, the intended screw points, I decided wasn't really needed, or I made new ones, and then I covered them with rivets, and then just painted it because I didn't want to have random holes through the blaster. The next part of this video, I'm going to open this up, show you what I did inside here, so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. And after that, we'll look at this blaster's performance. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so we got the blaster open. Let's go over the electronics. Starting from the front of the blaster, we have some Flywheel the World Merlins with some of the micro wheels. This is a Flywheel the World solenoid. We have a couple micro switches here. As you can see, it's a two-stage trigger, so when you hit the first switch, the flywheels engage. When you hit the second switch, it engages the solenoid. Currently, this is set up as a semi-auto build, but in the future, there's plenty of room in here to add an Arduino with a select fire switch and make this thing have select fire. Powering this is a 3S LiPo, and as you can see, there's a lot of room in the battery tray, which does give quite a few options. Now to go over all of the jank. So this flywheel cage, I'm not 100% positive what it came from, some type of Flywheel of the World thing, but it fit perfectly in here. I cut a bracket, glued it in place. As you can see, there's all kinds of putty and cuts and epoxy work all over this thing. A lot of this was kind of handmade. If you can see up in here, we have an angled Talon adapter.
Now I opted with this adapter because of its more crisp vector look, although it's not as game accurate. If we were going for game accuracy, I should have used something like that. This barrel up here is from a different project. I'll see if I can provide a link to that in the description. Essentially, I cut it off of the, I think it was a body kit, so that I could put some worker barrel material in here and attach it. I think this is all connected with brackets and broken dreams and epoxy resin. But yeah, that's the inside of the blaster. Let me know what you think. I know it's a mess. If you have any ideas with this thing or stuff I could rework, just let me know in the comment section. For now, let's put it back together.
All right, the blaster's performance. Unfortunately, this is not where I wanted it to be. However, I think it is a good start. And what I mean by that is I'm still gonna be working on upgrading this thing, making it shoot better, getting it more accurate, maybe even change out some of its inside internals, such as the flywheel geometry or the motors or the wheels. I'm still probably gonna do a little bit of work in there. But as it stands right now, let's take a look at the chronograph number so you can see where it's at. Special thanks to Added Darts, our official dart sponsor. Today we'll be shooting Worker Gen 3s. If you would like to support the DrFlux channel, next time you shop Added Darts, use our affiliate link. It does help a lot. 110, 102, 96, and 102. So pretty consistent 100 FPS. Now that you can see where this blaster's at as far as feet per second, let's talk about its accuracy. Now, it is doing something that I'm not too fond of, and that is every once in a while a dart will kind of shoot off to the side, maybe get some fishtailing, maybe spin, whatnot. And that is because when I built this thing out, I believe my flywheel cage is not exactly aligned as straight as it should be. That's a big factor, but I think the main thing that's doing it is how the darts are entering the flywheel cage. This long pusher right here, which its entire purpose is to mimic the game, makes it so this thing can kind of deviate in which the dart feeds into the flywheel cage. And that really can determine the accuracy of the dart. So what we have here is kind of more of a spray and pray option, which in my opinion is not necessarily the Kang Tao Smart Blaster from Cyberpunk, which is unfortunate because the way that gun works in the game is the bullets can actually lock onto a target. So not only is this thing accurate, but it's like ridiculously accurate in the game because you don't even have to see the person. Like you can basically go find its target. So in that regard, it's kind of a letdown. At a bare minimum, I wanted this thing to be super accurate at, 50 to 100 feet. But I mean, it is a flywheeler. This is flywheel the world geometry, so it's gonna be pretty hard to achieve that. So in closing, what do I think about the build? I, for one, love how it turned out. Now, the journey to get to how it turned out was a pretty rocky one, and I probably wouldn't recommend it for most people. Also, I started this project over 3 years ago, and I've really grown as a Nerf modder, and I do a lot of these things differently now. Now, as far as all these Kang Tao Smart type of Nerf blasters are concerned, I think this is the closest design to what it looks like in the game. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my Strife body kit from Flaming Foam. That's one blaster I'll probably never get rid of from my collection. But as far as one-for-one representation, this is a lot closer. The only way you can make it even better is actually have it fold up and collapse like it does in the game, because I think all this stuff, this slides in, this goes that way, this whole front section like pops out, so it actually is almost like a deploy. Maybe in the future we can make something like that. Well, if you made it this far in the video, I want to thank you for watching. As always, be safe and happy foam flinging.